Okay, action. And then keep on, we'll move to the next step.
It doesn't really matter if it's level, but it bothers me.
No. Well, I like that.
It's not level. Much better. I already have paint all over me somehow. We love her. We paint. I spend most of my time mixing paint and like very little actually paint, like relatively. I'm afraid I need to be careful because I might get paint on you.
I
That's not
already
good.
anticipated it
Okay.
as a possibility.
That is a possibility. Like, it happens.
All right. Mhm.
Ready?
Yep.
It's beautiful.
It is.
I think a lot of it is just like not being afraid to just do it.
That is the whole thing that I'm so fascinated by.
Yeah.
What goes on in your mind as you're doing your choices and.
Right now I'm doing her head.
Okay, but we have to be quiet so we can.
Oh.
The sound of change at work.
think mixing would be beautiful in slow-mo if we were gonna do it. Action! Woohoo! Action! Cool. Do anything? Okay, and action! Perfect.
I had it to like. Terrible idea. I like writing handwriting, so I wanted my business cards to have my handwriting. So I printed like a photo of like one of my paintings on one side and like the other, and I.
You really committed to your own handwriting,
Yeah.
not a photo of your handwriting.
Correct. Next time I'll do it. And I already printed too many of them to like.
Right.
And it was before that.
I caught the door and then it said don't, and I felt very close.
Action.
Just go with it.
Yeah, we'll do you.
Skip.
You're first.
Skip.
Can you skip?
So
Same hand, same hand.
Okay. Again.
Action. Oh. That was great, except my camera was in the action. You could do the A with a T. Wait. Action. Cool. Action. Whenever you're ready. That was close eyeline, but you didn't look. I'm speeding.
So before, just for transcription purposes, if you can just say your name and spell it.
My name is Cameron Mead, CAMERON MEADE.
Do that anymore, but just so we do. Okay, so let's jump into what we have just seen in your studio. So I'd like to know about your process. What's the first thing you do when you arrive?
Well, I mean, the very first step is to decide who I'm painting, and the way I do that is, I mean, it's a mix of deciding what pictures I have to work from and who I want to, who I feel like I should at the moment like be representing, who I want to make feel good, feel important. So, I mean, the girl that I was painting in the studio is someone who I want to at the moment make feel important.
I want to interrupt you because I think it should be present tense, the girl I am painting.
Sure.
Yeah. And if you want to, you know, there is going to be some back and forth because what will lead into this is, or, you know, at some point, you know, we're going to hear the wonderful, what your inspiration is, who you paint. So you let me know, is it easier for you if we do that sort of sequentially to start with that and then go into what your process is?
No,
do you
whatever.
have a preference? Because it does,
No.
you know, it's, I want you to feel comfortable. Okay.
No,
Okay.
happy to do whatever.
Okay, so then let's talk about, back into it a little bit with what, I'll just say, what is your process?
So while I'm actually painting, I'm looking at the photo and dissecting it into colors and shapes. And so, like, the initial steps of what I'm painting are blocking out the composition of the photograph in a series of colors and shapes. And there's a lot, kind of my own logic to the way I'm doing it. The underpainting kind of is meant to be more colorful and not as precise as the final layers.
So, who is in that that photo? Where did that come from?
So this particular photo is of one of the students from my mom's nonprofit. That particular moment is from one of the classes that the program offers to the students. And that student has been in the program at this point for a year and a half. She's in her first year of college. So I felt, for a number of reasons, felt like I wanted to paint her at the moment.
So what was going on in the moment you captured that photo? What was the...
That moment is from, there's a class they take called Dale Carnegie that's part of the after-school curriculum of the nonprofit. And the Dale Carnegie course teaches basically how to present yourself publicly and interpersonally, and every week there's a series of lessons on how to best represent yourself, and they do a speech. And after, I think, 8 weeks of classes, they do like a final graduation ceremony where each student gets up and does like a final speech. And so that picture is from that final graduation. And public speaking is terrifying for most people, but especially these students, where they don't feel. A lot of the work done at the nonprofit is self-esteem building, and Dale Carnegie is definitely part of that, where you get up and share parts of yourself and you're vulnerable in a public way. Yeah.
So then, what with the canvas? It's the red canvas. What did you prepare?
So that painting is actually stretched paper.
So you say this painting.
Sorry, yeah. So this painting is actually stretched paper, which is just a process of wetting the paper and stretching it around the wood frame and letting it dry. And then there's a series of sizing that I do to make the paper prepped for oil paint. And then I like to just start with just a flat, vibrant color as like the initial layer of the painting, which is kind of determined by what colors I expect to use as I'm painting it based on the photograph, but also kind of the aura of the person I'm painting. And also there's kind of just a little bit of randomness to it that's just meant to be something that I'm reacting to as I'm painting, like the later layers.
So then walk us through the steps. So you started out with putting the paint on the glass and...
Well, before he prepped the canvas, so how does he decide about the background?
As far as the red?
Yeah.
This particular color is, for one, I expected her dress, the color I knew I was going to use for her dress was kind of going to be this turquoise aquamarine color. For whatever reason, I just knew I was going to use that color. I know I'm going to use that color. And so a nice complement to that is this very vibrant, saturated red. But also there's something about that particular student that red kind of complements her disposition. And it, a lot of it has to do with the colors I've used previously in other paintings. I don't want every painting to be the same color, so I try to use a new starting color too. Yeah.
Okay. So then we saw you choosing colors and what is the process in terms of what kind of paint are you using and what are you doing at the table?
The way I build up the image is I purposely move around the canvas. Like I purposely want to be all over, kind of take account of the entire image. And I'm moving around painting whatever happens to interest me in that moment from the photograph. And as far as just, like, once again, dissecting the photograph into a series of shapes and colors that are estimations of the figure. And as far as the colors, I'm not really sure. There's kind of my own logic that I use to decide what colors I'm going to use to create the image. And I think it kind of happens as I'm going. Like I start with, in this case, I happen to be most interested by the dress first. And based on the colors in the photograph, I felt like I wanted to paint it this very particular turquoise. So I did that first. And then from there, the next thing that interests me happened to be her face. And responding to the color that I happened to choose for the dress, I chose a color that's kind of close to her actual face color, but a little bit off, so as to have the underlayers be a little bit more complicated and more interesting than just what's actually in the photograph. And then I just continue responding to whatever interests me in the photograph, building up the image one color and shape at a time.
Let's talk about, so as I was watching you and you're thinking, and you're deciding, what's going through your mind in the present?
As I'm painting. I mean, I'm definitely mindful, as I said, to be all over the canvas, to consider the entire image as much as possible. And I don't know, it's kind of this funny thing where I'm like kind of doing probably a lot less thinking than one would expect. Like I'm purposely trying to be not self-conscious and not be overwrought and to paint bravely and not afraid. I mean, it is just a painting. And I mean, if it's bothersome or difficult, then I feel like I'm doing it wrong. And so at this point, I kind of trust my instincts, and I think I've painted enough at this point to, like, yeah, just have an intuitive approach to it. Is it bad that I'm not explaining? That's the truth. Okay.
No, but maybe you could talk about the kind of palette that you use. I mean, there seems to be connections.
As far as the color?
Yeah, I mean, you're not.
I mean, I do.
Rembrandt, it's not chiaroscuro. You're doing something else.
I mean, I'm also aware of that. I want the way I'm painting. I want
Can you start? Okay.
Yeah.
The clap. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I want the images that I'm making to be playful and fun and joyous and light. So I want the way I paint to also complement that. So my approach to painting is to not, the actual painting is to not take it too seriously and to do it playfully, which means using a very vibrant and colorful palette that's very saturated and joyous and light. And I mean, the people I am painting are like colorful in personality and presence, so I want the actual paint to be colorful in the same way.
All right, we're done. We can go home. That's great.
Okay, good.
That was fantastic.
Cheers.
And just to wrap in, because I thought that was so fascinating, if you could redo what you said about the professor who's been a great influence and came in, maybe more of a
Yeah.
rigid mindset.
So when I first arrived at Pratt, I was more dependent, I think, on representing the photograph photorealistically. I was scared to veer too far away from the actual image in the photograph, like too afraid to be imaginative and creative even. And one of my first professors, one of my favorite professors here at Pratt, pointed out that when she looked at my initial work, when I first arrived at Pratt, that it was painted very rigid and very kind of stale or flat, and that if I was intending to make images that were playful and light, then the painting should actually complement that intention. And I thought that was a very good point, that the way I'm constructing the painting should match the intention of the image. Yeah. I was going to say something else. Oh, can I also say that, I don't know if this is relevant,
You
but...
can always also say.
Okay. I think my strength is actually in my ability to dissect the image that I'm trying to render, more so than the actual painting. I have much less experience in painting than I do like studying how we look at things and understanding the ways in which we perceive our world. And the fact that there's a lot of stimuli and information in the world, and we as people do things to kind of simplify and estimate. And so like my background in psychology and understanding the cognitive tools we use to do that helps me render the image the way I want to.
Talk a little bit about just the overall process for the totally uninitiated. You're not drawing, you're not sketching something first, you're coming to a canvas and it's abstract. You're going
Yeah.
from abstract. So if you could...
Yeah, I like the fact that I'm aware of the fact that I'm not sketching. That's a deliberate choice because I want the mistakes and the inaccuracies to remain. I found that those sorts of mistakes enhance the image rather than detract from it. And sketching, like drawing it out first, limits that sort of freedom and liberty to kind of be playful. And I definitely measure the image while I'm doing it. Like I want it to be somewhat proportional, but not sketching allows for kind of a back and forth between making sure it's proportional and rendering, and also just doing whatever I want, whenever I want. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So I can still put little notes to see if there was anything from the studio.
I'm afraid that I sound groggy, do I? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's that part.
I mean, there's nothing we can do about it anyway.
Is there anything else that you think we should talk about, just in terms of what you were doing when we weren't there, or that that will help the viewer understand what they're watching?
Well, I mean, one of the ways I think about the way I'm constructing the image as a kind of parallel to the way relationships work. That the way I'm constructing the image is I'm kind of estimating vague shapes and colors that, in the right composition, kind of estimate the person. And I continue to do this until each layer gets more and more specific, more detailed, more accurate, until after enough time doing this, the thing I'm painting resembles the person I'm attempting to render. And this is kind of true with relationships. At first, you get a vague understanding of the person. And the more time and experience you have with the person, you get a more accurate understanding of who they are. Yeah.
We'll hold for the
Yeah,
fire
okay.
truck.
Can I say one more thing along
Yes,
those same
absolutely.
lines? Does it sound good?
Good.
I mean, the reason that is relevant, what I just said, is I found in my experience through the nonprofit that a lot of relationships is shared time and a willingness to accept people for who they are, meet them where they're at. And if you focus on the good in a person, you'll find it. And a lot of times with the students in the program, at this point, I think I'm just adept at forming relationships because I've spent 10 years through the nonprofit forging relationships with people who in this kind of particular situation, where like I'm very abrupt, both parties are very abruptly kind of in each other's lives very dramatically, very quickly, and the students, rightfully so, are very reluctant to, yeah. Is this relevant?
Yeah, it really is.
Yes.
Okay. Oh no.
Okay, you just to pick up from where they're abruptly in each other's lives.
Yeah, the students, rightfully so, are not in a place where they're trying to trust anyone or welcome anyone new into their lives, and so they justifiably so are not trying to get close to anyone. And so after having enough experience with that, I've learned that just spending time, like being willing to be patient and spend time with people despite whatever they have going on, can be enough to forge a very meaningful relationship. And that's trickled into my experiences outside of the nonprofit too, like meeting people where they're at and being slow and patient and willing to spend enough time with someone to really understand who they are.
Now, if you could, we might need this overarching statement that you made in your beautiful introductory, skipping through your studio about what you do, which is this, where I just put the blue ink in that little box. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you could give us sort of that soundbite working from the photograph, just if we want to have a statement about your work, and then we'll get into the detail.
Okay. Okay. So I see my studio practice as a practice of gratitude, taking time to represent the wealth of people that add value and purpose to my life. I work from photographs that are taken spontaneously. They're not pre-planned. When I'm out with friends or family, I'll snap a quick photo and then work from it later. And I want the people I'm painting to be able to see themselves and feel that they are worthy and loved and celebrated.
I'm going to fix it a little bit.
Am I missing anything? Okay.
That was beautiful.
Great. Yeah, I had a feeling it was falling down.
Oh, is it part two?
That
It
went
went
very well.
somewhere.
And then part 2 of that, if you could hit
Cut
this.
this first. Speeding. Just wait for this person. Okay.
my art practice is meant to be a practice of gratitude. I want to celebrate the wealth of people that add value and purpose to my life. I work from photographs. When I'm out with family or friends, I'll snap a quick photo that's not pre-planned and work from it later. I paint in successive, transparent, washy layers, and each layer gets more and more detailed so that eventually I have a kind of accurate rendering of the person that I'm trying to paint. Because I want the subject of the work to be able to see themselves and feel worthy and loved and happy and celebrated.
Great.
Thank you. Very nice. Okay. I'm going to circle back to the top, but anything else about the studio? No, we don't. Okay.
No, I mean, obviously we need the whole diagram of the subject.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's fascinating. You pick large canvases. I think that says something. So I think that I'm curious of why.
Yeah, there's something I like both. There's something different about working large, life size, rather than small. When you're working small and doing portraiture, it's always an abstraction of the person. Whereas when you get more life size, the interface is more similar to that of an actual person, so it becomes more realistic, and even larger than that, it becomes more monumental and celebratory. And a lot of what I'm doing is meant to be celebratory of the actual subject. So in a lot of ways, the larger canvases works towards that. But I mean, I also like small too, because there's something particularly intimate and sweet about a small portrait. And what I love painting, doing small portraits and sending them via snail mail to the person that I'm doing, the person that I'm painting. Like, I love giving stuff away. That's my favorite.
So while we're right here, can you tell us, and if you don't have to get super detailed, we obviously want to be mindful of who you're painting, but who is the person in the photo and what is your relationship to?
In general, you're asking?
Or, as
Yeah.
much as you want to.
Yeah. So a large motivation for the work is that my family has a nonprofit back in my hometown of Tampa, Florida, that helps homeless, unaccompanied youth in high school. So these are high school students that are living without a parent or guardian. And they enter our program, and they are provided housing, food, academic support, personal mentorship, and a wealth of resources to make sure that they're successful. And my family's been doing this for the past 10 years, so I grew up kind of doing this work and being aware that there were young people out there who were living alone, which was a very different experience than I had, because I have been blessed with a wealth of people that care and nurture for me, my parents and many more people. And so a lot of the work I'm doing in the painting is meant to be appreciative of the fact that I do have so many people that care for me and nurture me. And so the subjects of my work are my family and friends, but also students from the nonprofit, all these wonderful people who add value and purpose to my life. And at this point, my mom and dad have, 200 children. I have 200 pseudo siblings that are just my family. I mean, at this point, the nonprofit is my family, which is very special and wonderful. I was going to say something else. I don't remember.
So that was beautiful. So then if you could give us a version of that if we just need a little, this is a student, we're going to be weaving stuff in,
Yeah.
so we might reference that at another point.
As far as who I paint.
or the girl in the photo.
Okay. So the figure in this painting is a student from my family's nonprofit. She's currently a first-year college student. I don't know if I want to say any more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you want to say, if I
Well-
think it's from for the she's celebrating having completed a course or something.
Well, I mean, I could say that. I mean, at this point, she's been in the program for a year and a half. But even more than that, she is my family. Like, she is a sister of mine. My mom considers her a daughter. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you consider her a sister?
Yeah, and I consider her a sister. Yeah. I kind of exist in this very weird place where I'm a brother, a parent, a teacher, a mentor, and a friend. Like, I'm kind of all and none. But yeah, she's a sister. And a lot of them are siblings of mine. I mean, friends, like very important friends of mine.
Nice. Okay. So now we're going back to some general information. No. So tell us your name. Who are you? Where are you in school? What are you studying?
My name is Cameron Mead. I just graduated from the Master of Fine Arts program at Pratt Institute.
Hold on, I don't know if you want to say you just graduated.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I can
Since
say I'm
we
a second
started
year.
when you were not yet
Yeah.
graduated. Yeah.
My name is Cameron Mead. I'm a second year Master of Fine Arts student at Pratt Institute. Should we do that again?
Yeah. We just wait for them to.
Should I say MFA or Master of Fine Arts?
I think MFA is okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not too jargon. Well, I guess.
I think people know
I
it.
think
Ready? My name is Cameron Mead. I'm a second year MFA student in painting at Pratt Institute.
And tell us about your background.
I don't know.
What, first of all, just in terms of what were your interests when, undergrad and graduates?
Okay. Well, in undergrad, I studied psychology, physics, and Chinese. I was kind of happily all over the place.
1 second. Someone's cell phone.
Cougars?
I don't think so. No. Train.
Training.
Chair and then turn the monitor on.
I'm gonna do that. Skiing.
So talk about my background.
Yeah, let's start with, you can say where you're from, and we can get into your whole family nonprofit, and then somewhere we weave in what you studied in school, and if
Okay.
you want to do it first.
I'm originally from Tampa, Florida. I'm originally from Tampa, Florida. What do you talk about my?
Yeah, let's start there.
Academics?
We can start with, because I'm going to ask you what's your inspiration, and then if you want to go into the family foundation
Okay.
at that point. So,
I'm originally from Tampa, Florida. I went to undergrad at Stanford University in the San Francisco Bay Area and spent 6 years out there before moving to New York. In undergrad, I studied physics, psychology, and Chinese. I was happily kind of all over the place, just exploring and being curious. And I didn't have a specific idea of what I wanted to do professionally, so I went to undergrad knowing that I wanted to leave with options. And so after I graduated, I had a research position at the University of California, San Francisco, and I was maybe planning to pursue a PhD in biophysics. But after 2 years of doing the bio research, I decided that it wasn't for me. I loved it. I enjoyed the 2 years that I was there, but I decided to pursue art more seriously. And I had been interested in art my whole life, like taken classes recreationally my entire childhood just for fun, and had really no interest of doing it professionally for no reason in particular. And I don't know, I had my job in science and changed my mind, I think, about pursuing art as a career.
What did you have to do to prepare to come here?
So when I decided that I was going to pursue art professionally, and so because I had no contact with the art world at all, I decided that getting an MFA would be a good investment of my time and energy, so as to have a foundation from which to pursue an art career. And so at the time I was living in San Francisco without a painting to my name, and so I moved back to Florida, my hometown of Tampa. I moved home and painted for a year nonstop with the intention of applying to MFA programs and hopefully ending up in New York. And thankfully it worked out as planned, and I moved to Brooklyn a year and a half later.
So what is the inspiration for your work?
I mean, I could talk about this. Okay, I guess I'll just go and you'll direct me.
Yeah.
Because this is like very involved.
Yeah. If there's a way to do it, because we've heard it and it's so beautiful, you're so articulate. So
Thanks.
knowing that we have to make a short piece, we
Yeah.
want to get the essence in
Right.
such a powerful way. So, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but
No, that's good.
just
That
so you know
is
if there's a way to
good
kind
that
of
you're
pack
telling
it
me.
in.
Yeah. Am I good? Okay. So, 10 years ago, my family founded, I wonder if I should say my mom or my family. 10 years ago, my mom founded a nonprofit that helps homeless students in my hometown of Tampa, Florida. And the program is called Starting Right Now. And Starting Right Now, I'm trying to think how to do it succinctly. Starting Right Now helps unaccompanied youth Starting Right Now helps homeless unaccompanied youth in Tampa, Florida gain the cultural capital they need to change the circumstances of their life and to empower them to have the life of their choosing. Was that succinct? Too succinct?
You
Too
can
vague?
try it a different way. I think so.
I think you
you're
have to
not
say
getting
that your
at
mother, I think you have to say when we started this.
Should I just go and then I guess you'll direct
Yeah.
me? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just tell the whole story. So when I was every year in high school, my mom would help a family in our hometown restart their life and help them kind of get back on track. These were homeless families, and she would get the family stable with housing and employment, and then focus her attention on the high school student in the family, helping them, making sure they succeed academically and continue on to a post-secondary education goal with the intention of ending the generational cycle of homelessness and poverty. And so my mom was just doing this on her own, and eventually the mayor of Tampa heard and challenged her to start a formal nonprofit. And so that was 10 years ago. So my mom founded Starting Right Now, which is a nonprofit that helps homeless unaccompanied youth in Tampa, Florida, with the goal of ending the generational cycle of homelessness and poverty. And Starting Right Now provides for all of the students the necessary resources and opportunities to make sure that they can really have authority and self-determination in their own life. So I mean, the primary focus is to make sure they graduate high school and continue on to a post-secondary education goal. So we have students that are in a formal university in vocational training and in the military. And we continue with our students indefinitely, even into college and as young adults. So we have students that have been in the program for 8 or 10 years that are now married with children and have salaried jobs with benefits and are just family. And I was going to say something else. Part of the program is its own, the program, I should call it by its name, starting right now has its own after-school curriculum that every Monday and Wednesday for the entire year, the high school seniors in the program attend classes on a variety of things. They have classes on emotional intelligence, Dale Carnegie leadership training. We have a poetry class. We have an etiquette class. We have classes on healthy relationships and boundaries. A wealth of kind of life skills that are not taught in school and are not modeled at home for our students, but are necessary life skills to make sure that they are I was going to say something that I don't think is correct. These are skills that, I mean, a lot of it is therapeutic. These students have it. Am I good?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing while we're waiting? I just want to make sure that it doesn't seem like I'm only painting the students, because for one, that's not true. And second of all, it's like, I don't want to like fetishize these homeless students. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's talk about that. So if we're going to talk about, next I'm going to get into wide portraiture, but anywhere in here, if you want to say, I do, certainly in your inspiration, this is a big part of it, what your background is and how this informs your work and why it's meaningful to you. So then if you want to fold in then what else? So there's this, I do this, that, and I paint this, whatever the this is that you want to include, that way we can balance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like they're all the same subject, though. Like,
I think so.
I think there's no difference between the students. They're all friendships and relationships with people.
Yeah, it's about humanizing everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's really that's nailing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I should have said that earlier when I was describing
No,
it, but
No,
Yeah,
but
it's good.
we're still here, so,
Yeah. Oh, okay,
we
good.
can do that.
I'm
We
just
can do that.
gonna sneak.
I mean, on that same like line of thinking, I mean, the way I think about it with the nonprofit work is it's not us helping them, it's all of us collectively working towards everyone's kind of liberation. Because I, for one, have learned immensely and grown tremendously from the work I've done at Starting Right Now, which is a function of, I mean, sitting in the classes that they take, but also just an exchange of ideas and experiences with people who are different than me. And I think about that, or who are seemingly different than me, but actually very I mean, we've had different experiences, but a lot of what makes us human is the same. And that's true with the staff. I mean, I think about the staff at Starting Right Now who are also, learning and gaining in whatever way they are from working at the nonprofit, and the mentors who are volunteer workers, or volunteer members of the community who are spending time with the students and, I mean, everyone affiliated with the nonprofit. And obviously the students have immediate and specific needs, maybe certain pressing needs, but that we obviously work to aid or resolve. But all of us are, there's an exchange between all of us involved that's like more the larger, that is something worth noting, like all of us are gaining from the time spent at the nonprofit, with the nonprofit, which is a lot of what the art is about, like that, I mean, my portraiture hopefully is a humanizing of a diverse group of people, all of which I know intimately and care about, and that I want to see represented kindly and lovingly, compassionately. Yeah.
I like that, because I was going to that direction next, representation, and how you feel about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, all the people that I've painted are very excited to see themselves. I mean, I'm definitely thinking about showing the person I'm painting while I'm painting. Like, the subject of the work, I'm thinking about showing it to them once I'm done. And so I want them to be able to see themselves. I also want it to be, you know, imaginative and creative and have my own sort of perspective in it. But yeah, every time I show someone that I painted them, I'm surprised at how much people care. Like, and I mean, at this point I've been doing it for a little while, but when I first started painting people, I was surprised at like how excited someone was to get a painting of themselves and like hang that on their wall. Like the thought of hanging a painting of myself on my wall just isn't appealing to me, but people love seeing themselves, which, I mean, makes sense. People want to see themselves reflected.
And why portraiture?
I think my experience with the nonprofit has just made me interested in people, just in general, in a number of ways. I mean, a simple kind of non-answer is that I just enjoy painting people more than anything. It's just what excites me the most. Like the idea of, I like the idea of taking the time to carefully and thoughtfully render someone. Like there is a very compassionate thing. I find, portraiture to be very compassionate in that you're taking the time to express that this is how I see you. And I mean, particularly with, sorry, I'm like mumbling my thoughts.
Do you want to see what you said before?
I mean, I think I know. I'm just.
But you pretty much covered it. I like how you just expressed it. But if there's anything else you want to add,
I just am not sure if I said it clearly. So the thing about portraiture is that I like taking the time to carefully and thoughtfully render someone to, I mean, it's my way of saying this is how I see you, and hopefully it's with compassion.
nice. Okay, so let's see.
Do you want to pivot to talk about Derek?
Yeah. There it is. Okay, so let's talk about the internship. How did it come about? How did you meet Derek?
I knew coming to Pratt and being in an MFA that one of my goals was to find mentors, whether it be professors or working professionals in the art world in New York. And so one of my professors mentioned that she was teaching an internship course where you could get credit working in the art world with a professional. And so I immediately jumped on that opportunity and approached her and asked her to be in the class. And she asked like what kind of work I wanted to do, and I told her I would prefer to work in a artist studio as an assistant. And I told her artists that I liked, and from that she connected me to Derek, which has been just wonderful, like an incredible experience. And I think, funnily enough, a lot of the, one of the major components of starting right now is mentorship. We preach a lot to our students that you should find role models and people who have experience and expertise that you can learn from, like seek out role models and mentorship. And I think from preaching that so much, I've very much manifest that in my own life. Like every endeavor I undertake, my goal, my objective is to find mentors who have done it already, who have done it well, who know what they're doing, and who are willing and able to share that kind of experience with me.
And so, I'm going to break this all down. So who's Derek Adams?
So Derek Adams is a painter and multidisciplinary artist based in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and I work as a studio assistant in his studio.
And what have you learned from him? What's been the greatest value?
The greatest value. There's so many things. For one, I really appreciate his actual art practice. The intention of his work is meant to be uplifting and to kind of create a narrative around a group of people who are often represented. It's a very succinct way of saying it. He's kind of creating his own narrative for a specific group of people. Like we've had long conversations about what he thinks is the value in art, or the function, like the potential of what art can do, and the importance and sometimes shortcomings of representation. So I think for one, we share a lot of, we have a lot of the same opinions about the role of art in representation. But I've also gotten a lot of professional advice from him as far as he's been to my studio a number of times. He very kindly offered to come and see my work and hear what I'm doing and give me critique, which was very helpful. He was the one he came last summer at the end of my first year to my studio and saw what I was doing and recommended that I start working bigger because I should take this final year of my MFA and be ambitious, which was great advice. And I was going to say something else. Oh, and as I'm about to graduate and no longer be a student, he's given me a lot of advice on how to gracefully transition from a student to a working professional, or kind of somewhere in between, as far as how I should go about finding a new studio space, or what sort of opportunities I should be applying to as an emerging artist, and what kind of people I should be trying to meet. I could go on and on. Also, he's just extremely kind and generous, and there are so many people coming through his studio that he seems to be mentoring, very I don't know, I just think I would, I don't know, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And if you could dance back to when we were there taping what you were doing. Can you just give us a little?
Well, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
So when I first got to his studio, he was working on a project on Patrick Kelly, who's a fashion designer who I think is deceased. And Derek had gone through the archive at the Schomburg Center and taken inspiration from the designs of Patrick Kelly and done a project with the Studio Museum in Harlem that was installed in a branch of the library in Harlem. So Derek had these art projects based on Patrick Kelly's work that's now in a library. And I think I was very impressed with that project because the young people from the neighborhood who attend the library will see that art and be made aware of Patrick Kelly, who is a notable fashion designer that I didn't know of before Derek did the work. So Derek is very aware of who he's referencing and who he's speaking to, which I think a lot about with my own work. I'm constantly thinking about the question, who gets to speak for whom, why, and to whom. And a lot of when I'm painting, I'm asking myself who is the audience of this work? Am I painting for the art market, a collector? I mean, I think the real answer is I'm painting for my community, my community back in Tampa, really. I want to represent them, for them, to them, with them. Be painting them. The idea of my kind of community back in Tampa being shown in a gallery or a museum that is very exciting to me.
That was great. I want to make sure, just because when I'm thinking back of the work that was in your show, it included some other friends who are not connected to the foundation. So I just want to make clear that you would just say, have a line, so we have a line that says, I also paint people I consider to be, friends that I consider to be part of my extended family or something, just so we can.
Okay.
The dancers, the girl on the
Yeah.
little bus, yeah.
The subjects of my work are the people in my life that, I said so I'm going to start over. The subjects of my work are the people in my life who add value and purpose to it. I'm just going to talk to you as if I'm talking to you. I do better like that. Okay. So I paint my friends, family, and students from the nonprofit. That doesn't really answer your question. I like to paint all the people that comprise my life, people that add value and purpose. So sometimes I'm painting the students from the nonprofit, people who I consider family, but also very important friends who I also consider family are sometimes the subject of my work. Is that too long?
No, I think that
Okay.
works. Yeah, and if you want to say people at school with or people I met, if you
Yeah.
want,
The girl that was at the opening, the dancer with her boyfriend, has been a friend of mine since high school. So at this point, she's one of my best friends and is a sister at this point. Yeah, but I think what I'm just trying to. Yeah. The thing is that with the nonprofit, I've seen students be in the nonprofit for years and be successful, complete high school, go on to their post-secondary education goal and complete that and go on to get jobs and do great stuff. But I have found that without the right support system, the relationships that create meaning that doesn't matter. And you can be accomplished and feel lonely. And so really what my art practice is doing is it's a reordering of values. It's saying that relationships matter like healthy, long-term relationships, like real intimacy and trust, is something that is worthwhile.
I want to mention two things that I'd like you to talk about. One is how you had discussed with us how a lot of art explores the difficulties of being gay, and that you've had a great life and the exuberance of your art, it reflects that. So that's number one. And then the second thing, well, we want you to talk about how you felt about the show.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have show questions, but what I also just want to make sure we cover, because you said what your role is in working for Derek,
Oh, for you.
but if you could get a little specific about what you were doing, which is sort of like a for instance. So I'm your studio,
okay.
but
But
you
you
know,
should
sort
talk
of
about
like-
what you taped him doing.
yeah, that's what I mean. What we were, if we could kind of
Yeah.
roll back and so that while we're watching you do that, we're
Yeah.
hearing what you're doing.
I'm just trying to remember what I did. I gessoed something, I cut fabric. Is that all I did?
Weren't you like creating a kind of catalog, so we knew, you were creating a,
Yeah, I cut
Oh.
fabric for him so
so he
that
would
like an
know
inventory.
what materials he has.
And maybe preface it like he works with textiles in his body of work, so some of the things that.
Nice. So I'm a studio assistant in Derek Adams' studio, and I do various tasks to help with his art practice. A lot of the work I do is preparatory work, so underpainting and gessoing materials for him to paint on. And okay, a lot of what I do is prepping materials for him to work on later, so I'll gesso or do very loose underpainting for him. I don't want to say I underpaint, I think that's the thing I'm getting hooked on. Okay, a lot of what I do is prepping materials for Derek, so I'll do a lot of gessoing of supplies for him to later paint on. He works with a lot of textiles, so recently I was helping him create an inventory of his materials so that he knows what textiles he has to work with.
So that's what you were doing when you were there. So maybe if you could say I've been, because it's sort of like you, before we see you, you've been doing that, now we see you.
Okay. So,
Or you can say I'm, you know.
okay. So Derek incorporates a lot of textiles into his paintings. So I am inventorying. So I'm creating an inventory of his materials so that So I'm creating an inventory of his materials so that he knows what textiles he has to work with.
And if you could just tell us, when you say I'm gessoing, I know nothing. What's gessoing?
Yeah, I think people would be surprised at how much preparation goes into, like a lot of unseen preparation goes into the creation of a painting. I mean, not always, but traditionally. So there's a lot of layers that go onto the canvas. In that case, it was wood. In this case, it's wood. But that go onto the substrate on which you're painting. So gesso is how do I describe it? It's a substance made out of chalk that, it's used on canvas to kind of make the surface better to receive the paint. Some people use it to make it more even, more like hard, more dry, more tight. I'll do a couple layers. I'll do a couple layers of gesso on my canvases or on my stretched paper because I like the surface to be very tight, like very durable when I'm painting on it, and gesso kind of tightens it up a little bit.
And just because I'm hearing it in the interim, if you could say, you don't have to continue the whole thing, we'll cut it together, but I'm using gesso, which is
Okay.
which is
You didn't actually see me do that. Does that matter?
Oh, you didn't do that.
No, it's before. Well,
Oh,
under the red paint, there's gesso.
But when you were with Derek.
Oh, yeah, with Derek.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gessoing, I think it was a wood panel, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's wood panel. I'm gessoing this wood panel to make it ready for Derek to paint on.
This is just so that we have a tight way to get into the explanation of gesso. So if you can use, I think you said something like gesso something, but just to have the flow, I'm gessoing or I'm using gesso, which is a, and then we'll fill in the.
What is it? It's like a.
But I think you said it already, or which does something. But I just wanted the which to have the which, so that we can flow it together without having to break it up.
So I'm gessoing this wood panel for Derek, which makes it better to receive paint. I don't know if that's the best way to say it.
Yeah. So I think what I'm going to say is gessoing, which is a chalky substance. The which is to the definition of gesso, just for the people like me who don't know about it.
So I'm gessoing this wood panel for Derek, which is a chalky substance that makes the substrate better prepared to receive paint.
I think that's fine. I mean, I think we have it in many ways.
The problem is I don't really know what it is.
It doesn't even have to get. It's just that I don't want to use a term that people are like, what? What did he say? I mean, the point is it's preparing the canvas or the wood. That's what's important, not really what it's made of, but really what's the purpose of it.
Should I do it again?
Yeah, just do it that way. So we just have, it needs to be like just a tight sentence. I didn't mean to make it a big thing. I just don't want to have people thinking, what's that art jargon? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So I'm gessoing this wood panel for Derek, which makes it, So I'm gessoing this wood panel for Derek, which prepares it for his painting.
I think that's right. Everybody okay with that? Yes? Okay.
That's what we're getting.
Let's get to, I'm going to point to this, which is what you said, and we want to get at this notion of a joyous representation.
I could go on and on about this.
Okay.
So I would start with Okay. Growing up, or even still today, the common narrative of a gay person or a gay man that I see in the media, either in film or television, sometimes in art too, often in art too, is a person who is isolated, confused, someone who's reckoning with their sexuality. And I am a gay man, and I think about my art being my version of queer art, and instead of it being about me reckoning with my sexuality and feeling isolated, my art is about the innumerable examples from which I find love and belonging. Growing up, the narrative, I'm going to kind of repeat myself. Growing up, the narrative that I saw was the gay boy who has to exist in the closet and in secret and in hiding and be unsure about his sexual orientation and feel confused about it. And my experience was very different, and it's not to discount that experience, because that does happen for sure, but to offer an alternative. I mean, I think about, the power of art is to represent the world differently than it already is. Like, if I wanted to see sadness and struggling, I would look out my window, and I think art has the potential to create a different reality. And so I'm aware of the fact that my art is kind of my own version of queer art. It's celebratory and joyous and not confused, and it has nothing to do with sexuality. It's about the number of examples from my own life where I feel love and belonging. Does that make sense? Kind of.
You could re-say that. Say that again. Just because your voice dropped a little bit and
Okay.
it sounded like you weren't quite sure.
It
Which is
wasn't.
okay. No, it's okay to be not sure, but I'm not sure we heard
Well,
it.
the problem is that, not the problem, the reason I'm unsure is that it's kind of this, odd thing because I'm not saying I don't want to talk about it because I do, but in talking about being a queer person, it is othering in of itself. Just the fact that I have to identify as that. I don't have to. The fact that I am identifying as that. But it is true that my art, I'm aware of my art being about the fact that I am gay. That is something that I'm mindfully
Well, why don't you
aware of.
say it like that, though?
Yeah.
As far as what?
Well, say, by talking about this, like,
It's funny because Derek is gay and he is very aware of the narrative around his art too, which is that it doesn't involve that. Not that he denies or hides it.
I mean, we could, if you want to say something, and then if you want to involve whether or not you want us to include it, we will respect your wishes.
No, I'm not
And-
worried about it.
But I think the idea that,
I brought it up. I want to talk about it.
yeah.
in the
Yeah,
thing.
and
Yeah.
also it's fine to be, I didn't mean to say you have to be definitive and, you can be thinking about part of the, you're not wrestling, but what you said about by saying it, you're othering, so whatever you want to say in that
Well,
way.
yeah, I think I'm just working out how I want to say it is the thing. Because the thing that I think about is, so I mean, there are obviously occasions where that sort of reckoning with sexuality, that sort of narrative is real. But I feel like in art, I mean, that existing in art to me only reifies and perpetuates the idea that that is inevitable and inescapable. The fact that if you're gay, you have to reckon with it. And so I want to, or only in so much as that's mainly the narrative of which a young gay person sees. Like, as a young gay person, I grew up seeing only stories featuring gay people who were reckoning with being gay. And so for me, even though I had a wealth of people who just did not care, I was still felt like I had to hide. And I did. I was in the closet for the first 20 years of my life. And I never once saw the alternative of just a young person just being gay and it not being a thing. Like, not having to reckon with it. And so I'm aware of, like, I want to contribute to the alternative set of images where I am a young gay person. My art is a reflection of my life, which kind of incidentally has nothing to do with the fact that I'm gay, in so much as it's not a problem, but kind of colors my life in a way that any other attribute of myself does. And so I think about a young person seeing my art and being aware that I'm gay and thinking, like, regardless of what they have going on in their own life, being like, oh, this is a possibility of a way to live as a gay person, someone who doesn't have to reckon with it, someone who can kind of self-determine or find their chosen family. Like, there does exist a reality where someone who is gay exists in the world where they have people who appreciate them for who they are. I was going to say something else. What was I going to say? I don't remember. Can't remember.
It's all right. You can.
Should I say more on that?
I thought that was beautiful. I really think it totally captured and making me.
Right, but we needed in a sentence.
I know, that was 3 minutes of
there
its
was.
own.
No, I think you
Okay.
had it. But yeah, okay. Try one that's very, very short.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Well, I mean, I genuinely think that life imitates art. So what people see is what they understand to be a possibility for the world, and that in of itself is kind of self-fulfilling. I mean, just being aware of the possibilities kind of leads to has a potential to lead to, I don't know, that being fulfilled. But I'm aware that in the images I think a lot about the kinds of images I'm making and what kind of contribution they would make to the world. And I want the images I'm making to represent the life of a gay person who is fulfilled and has self-esteem and feels love and belonging. And I think about a young person seeing my work and seeing that as a potential for their own life. Like, this is a possibility. You can be gay and happy and confident and find people who accept you and love you for who you are.
So let's just move to the opening. Okay. So we do have a lot that we did there, your statement and what's going on, but just so that we have it in case we want some here. Just, briefly, or, succinctly, what's the occasion for the opening and what are you showing?
And present tense in the moment, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
So this is the opening reception of my MFA thesis show. It's a culmination of the past 2 years spent at Pratt, where I show a final breath of work. And at the reception, I invite family, friends, and people I've met in the art world to relationships I've nurtured in the art world to come and see what I've been working on at my time at Pratt. Yeah.
Yeah. Just do we have, because I think if I'm seeing you in the room, if you could say I've invited, because
Okay. I've invited family, friends, and I can't decide if I want. Is that weird to say relationships I've nurtured in the art world? Does that seem okay?
You can say it if you can put it in or not.
Okay. I've invited family, friends, and mentors from the art world to come and see the work that I've been doing for the past 2 years at Pratt.
And how did you select the paintings, and who are the people in the paintings?
How did I select the paintings? I mean, they were the three I liked the best. But why? I mean, I showed both large life-size work and smaller works on paper. And when I was deciding which pieces to show, I was thinking about, I think I showed 12 or 15 pieces in all, and I was thinking about showing a mix of relationships from my own life. I wanted some of the subjects of the work to be from the nonprofit, and I wanted some to be friends from undergrad. I wanted some of them to be new relationships, older relationships. Some of the people featured in the show were people I've met since moving to New York. I kind of wanted it to embody not one specific kind of place or moment from my life, but to kind of represent a more inclusive idea of what I've experienced through the people I've experienced it with.
And then we're back in the room and we're walking around with you as the audience, or panning the camera. So I'm showing large works that are oil. You know, if you talk about
These?
and we're seeing, and then the smaller with the watercolors. So, and
Okay.
what you like about doing oil.
So, okay. These large works are oil paintings on canvas. Why do I like working in oil? I'm not sure. I mean, oil paint dries very slowly, so it's malleable in a very particular way. You can go back into it kind of indefinitely. And I mean, for me, it's easier to work larger with oil paint because there's more pigment. You can just I have an easier time working larger with oil paint. The smaller works on paper are watercolor, which I find easier to work smaller. And watercolor is much more immediate and less forgiving, which in certain ways is better. But I mean, there are times when I particularly want to work quickly and it to be more immediate. So in those moments, I work in watercolor. But also, I mean, I like going back and forth because they inform each other. So I've had moments where I've been over oil paint and I take a break and exclusively work in watercolor and love it, and then when I go back to the oil painting, I feel refreshed and have a new perspective on it from the work that I've done in the watercolor, and vice versa. I guess I'll just talk about it. And yeah, I love working in watercolor because you're subject to the unpredictability of the water, which is nice for me. I like that I'm forced to kind of be spontaneous and adjust and react, and I think it accentuates the kind of intention of my work because the watercolor is light and airy and fluid. Yeah, but I mean, I also love oil paint.
That's good.
Yeah, oil paint's rad too.
That's good. So now let's reflect on the two paintings. There were people who saw their image. So if you could talk about let's start with the dancer and her reaction, and what that meant to you.
So this is a painting of my best friend from high school and her boyfriend, who's also a good friend of mine. And they both live in New York and are kind of my family here. I've known her for forever, and so she's like a sister. And yeah, I mean, one of my favorite parts of the painting is showing the person that I'm painting and seeing their reaction to it. So that moment where they see themselves being rendered by me and also being shown in my exhibit is a very special moment. I like that they get excited that they're part of the show. And I hope that they think that the painting is a beautiful representation of them. Yeah, is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, that was nice. No,
Okay, was it? I don't know.
Yeah. We're going to see them, as we hear that, we're going to see them looking at it. So that's perfect. It doesn't,
And I think a lot about self-esteem and what it means to feel worthy. And I mean, I think taking the time to paint them and to show them in my exhibit expresses to them how I feel like they are worthy of, well, worthy of what? How they are worthy. Why does that matter? I mean, yeah. People, there's two things. One is people like feeling important. And so I want the people that I'm painting to feel important. But I've also found, I mean, this is one of the lessons from the nonprofit, is that one of the best ways to be happy yourself is to make other people happy. And the art practice is definitely part of that.
And do you want to say a little bit about the young woman who came as a surprise?
Yeah. So at this point, they're two of my best friends came and surprised me at my show in New York. I had no idea they were coming. They work at the nonprofit, their staff, and they've been there for years now. And so I was living in San Francisco doing my research thing, and then I moved home to pursue the MFA. And while I was home, I was working at the nonprofit part-time and painting. And so while I lived at home for a year and a half, I got particularly close with these two girls and the other people who were on staff at the time. And it's funny, I think they know me in a particularly intimate way because they've lived a lot of the experiences that I had through the nonprofit. And like, the nonprofit is such an important part of my life. And you kind of can't, like, there's no way you could really understand most of it unless you've experienced it. And so a lot of my friends have heard me talk about it, but just wouldn't be able to have like a real understanding of it. So that I have a special bond with these two girls, and they work with my mom, and like at this point they're kind of sisters. I mean, it's just, yeah. And so I had even invited them to come, just like joking, because they live in Florida. I mean, just like informing them that I was excited for my show to come, and I know they're not coming, but here's the invitation. And then they showed up that night, and I was shocked, so surprised, and it was funny because it was very much like life imitating art. Like I had the exhibit, or like my show, was very much about me appreciating the people that I love and that add value and purpose to my life, and then to have people, these two friends, go out of their way to like reciprocate that or appreciate me was just very pertinent.
And I think, I just want to make sure that we know that the girl who came is in the painting.
Okay. And so, yeah, it was especially nice, should I refer to her by name? It was especially nice for Dominique to come, because one of the paintings I was showing had her in it. It is a painting of her and one of the students from the program. And so to be able to show her in person the painting, and for her to see it and be able to comment on her appreciation for it, was very nice.
What did it mean to have Derek come?
I really appreciated Derek coming. He's been to my studio a number of times while I've been at Pratt and given me advice along the way. And so for him to come and see kind of this, it's not an end, but to see this kind of, what do I call it? This
of work, of like what I've been working
Yeah, this kind of, okay, so for him to come and see this culmination of this moment was very nice. And I mean, yeah, working in his studio, being able to talk with him at length and see his work, his practice, and for him, the times he's come and visit my studio, I mean, he's most definitely an integral part of my art practice. He is an invaluable mentor. And so I really enjoyed being able to show him what I've done, and I mean, yeah, see him be proud of the work that I've done.
So we're winding up. So just a couple things. how, I think you covered this, but if you just want to reflect on how being here at Pratt, being in this program has been of value to you, changed your work or your life.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the time I've spent at Pratt. Sorry.
Some water?
No, I'm good. I just needed to burp. I'm very happy with the time that I've spent at Pratt. For one, I've just enjoyed it. It's been immensely fun. But also I feel much more prepared to pursue an art career. I feel much, maybe I'm naive, but I feel much calmer about the whole endeavor, both professionally and when I'm actually making the paintings. Like the time I spend painting, I'm much more calm, and I'm happier with the actual work that I'm making. I've learned a lot about the actual techniques of painting and the materials I'm using. But also I'm leaving with a handful of mentors, both professors that I've had here and internships that I've had through Pratt, and a community of peers who are also in a similar stage of figuring out how to have a successful art practice and meaningful art practice. And so, that is also invaluable because, you definitely need people, both mentors and peers, to keep encouraging you and keep you focused and motivated. And before coming to Pratt, I didn't have any connection to any sort of art world. And at this point I have a nice beginning of kind of my place in it. A place from which to grow, for sure, but a nice foundation.
Just so that we're covered, because there was a smack on the word prepared. You said, I'm much more prepared to enter the art world. I believe
Yeah.
you said that. You just repeat that line.
I feel, after my time at Pratt, I feel much more prepared to gracefully enter the art world.
Okay. And how about specifically living in New York?
Yeah, one of the main motivations for coming to Pratt was that I wanted to be in New York, specifically in Brooklyn. For one, to be in the arts, I think you can't beat New York. That's obvious. And I don't know if this matters, but being in living in Brooklyn was more appealing to me. It's just a little bit slower than Manhattan. But going to school in New York, I've been able to really have real experience in the art world, attending shows, going to museums, seeing exhibits and openings, and meeting local artists who have a functional art practice, which is extremely educational, all of that.
And we have covered this, but I'd just like to ask, why are you an artist, and what is it that you love about what you do?
Why am I an artist? The thing is that the thing I love the most is the time spent doing the art. So I spend hours and hours in my studio painting, and I love it. And it's funny because one of my professors was talking about success recently and what success means, and to her, she was saying that success for her is having the ability to be in her studio making the work. And so at the moments when she's doing that, when she's in the studio making work, she says she feels successful. And I thought that was a really nice way of thinking about it, because there's a lot of pressure and expectations to, I mean, yeah, to, obviously I want to be able to eat, to make money and eat, but I mean, there's value in actually just the time spent making the work and the fact that I enjoy the time doing it. And I don't know if this is, I don't know, I was doing I had my job in research and really enjoyed it. I was learning a lot. I loved the people I worked with, but just didn't feel that I wanted to do it forever. Just didn't feel in my spirit that it was the right thing. And we spend a lot of time at the nonprofit talking about how you should really cultivate your passion and spend your time in meaningful ways, and how you have how with the right opportunities and resources and hard work, you have the ability to self-determine. And so I was preaching that kind of at the nonprofit and doing differently. Like I knew I wasn't fully fulfilled doing the research work. And I mean, the truth is I would spend my hours at work doing the research, and then when I left work, I would spend all my time doing creative projects, just like obsessed about whatever random art project I had going on recreationally for fun. And I just realized that if there was a way I could spend my time working and being delighted in my art projects, that was probably the best path.
One thing I forgot to ask when we're going back to the opening, and so you have your artist statement, but people who see your work, what did you want them to take away, and how do how does it work? Like they might not know the whole background.
Yeah, that could be that was my one question I really wanted to hear. Maybe not even specific to the show, but to your work in general.
Yeah.
It's like, you're opening a conversation, and I didn't even know the background myself until we're here.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, I did say this. I'm going to not answer your question and then answer it.
Yeah.
Because I do think a lot about who my audience is and who I'm painting for. And should I wait?
Sorry, Karen, yeah.
I think we're clear.
I think we're okay now, yeah.
I do think a lot about who my audience is and who I'm painting for, and I'm definitely painting for my community back in Tampa. And so when they see my work, I want them to feel important. Because even when I feel like I have a lot of paintings to make because I want to represent everyone. But even when I haven't represented a specific person, like someone affiliated with the nonprofit who sees a painting of someone else from the nonprofit, I get the sense feels important because we're all this, like, I don't know, interconnected community. So I mean, the short answer is I want the people seeing my work to feel important, but those are the people who know the background of the work. And so I don't really know how the people who don't know the background of my work would feel, because I'm aware that by looking, yeah,
Stuff good.
lots of screeching.
Just dragging chairs, yeah.
I'm aware that a naive viewer would have no idea of the background of my work just by looking at it, and that's kind of intentional because good.
Think about it. And also, and I do know the background, but if I just sort of go in and see, I am so taken with the joy, that the expression of joy in the faces, I just get that. And I don't, without any background, I wouldn't still say that. So anyway, I just want to throw that in there.
Sorry, I'll let you know when the siren has left us.
Every time I call my parents and I'm walking somewhere, there's a siren and they're like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I live in a city." They're like, "What now?"
Okay, we're clear.
I think a lot about my work as a collective, like the breadth of my work, and when I've had enough time. I mean, I'm still very much a fledgling artist, but when I've had the time to make a wide and vast diversity of work, like representing different people, how someone who doesn't even if they don't know the particular background of my story, how they'll see a diverse group of people represented joyously and fulfilled and confidently celebratory, and how that will kind of speak to how my work is meant to humanize and celebrate the individual, but also honoring community and the collective.
The series is for everybody, lifelong learners. We especially want young people to learn about art, to get a sense of appreciating art, but also to think about making art. So I want to dial back to when you talked about this professor who, so if you have something to say about, you said you did it when you were a child, just the making of art and the value of creative expression, and you don't have to be talented to do, if you have something to say about that.
I definitely do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I reflect back on my early experiences doing creative work, art, like various art projects and the art classes I was in, and I'm amazed at how often whatever teacher I had really valued my ideas and how important that is for a young person. I had a lot of teachers who very genuinely cared about my perspective and my creative ideas, and who nurtured that in me, and I feel like that very much set a foundation for me to grow up a very confident and assured person. And a lot of I was about to go on a ramble about the education system, but maybe I'll save you that. I mean, a lot of the education system is about discipline and conformity and not about nurturing creativity and individuality. And so people are afraid to be creative and different because they're told not to be. Whereas I had the opposite, which is invaluable. I was thinking about this lately. It's I don't feel like I have anything to prove to anyone, which is a very freeing place to be. I can be whoever I want, and as long as I'm not infringing upon anyone else, I can just be in the world, which is a very nice place. It's very much the place I want my students to be. I'm hung up on this question you have about why I'm an artist. Because it's an interesting question. And I might just ramble. Is that okay? I mean, every decision I make is with the idea in mind that I have a lot of people looking to me as a role model. Is that noise a problem?
Yeah.
We should try
Yeah, this is our last.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, every decision I make is with the idea in mind, or knowing that I have a lot of people looking up to me as a role model. And I don't know. Yeah, okay. I don't know.
I think we covered a lot in what your passion is and what your inspiration is. So, okay. Just if there's anything else.
Well, can I talk about bell hooks? I don't know if this will end up in the segment, but bell hooks is a feminist writer and cultural critic. She's published more than 40 books, I think, and she's my idol. And I mean, she writes a lot about the importance of representation in art and how sorry, there's
Okay.
I mean, a lot of the like oppressive realities of the world are a result of, I'm wondering if I'm getting too harebrained. I don't know, bell hooks writes a lot about the importance of representation and how creating transgressive and visionary imagery that's different than the trope representations of oppressed groups, is important and vital in order to reframe a lot of the ideologies that lead to oppressive realities. Am I sounding like a crazy person? I mean,
No, it's okay.
Okay.
You know, we'll probably use. I think we want to hear that she's your idol. You know, and
honestly, it's my destiny to meet her. That's honestly how I feel. Because a lot of the things she writes about are so relevant to the nonprofit work, like for the students, but even more than that for me / everyone as an individual, and the ways in which we kind of perpetuate oppressive realities without even knowing it. Like, yeah, this might be too.
I would say just if you can succinctly say what it means for your work, why that's informs your work.
Bell Hook's writing really informs my work because she talks a lot about the importance of transgressive imagery and the idea of innovative representations of oppressed people.
In the room, anybody have a question that we missed? Anything that you want to get across?
I don't think so.
I want you to take a stab at what you want someone to take away from your art again, and be confident in whatever that may be. But I think it's an amazing question, and it can definitely go back to what you just said. Like, you're representing people that maybe have been oppressed, but these are just people. Like, you have an amazing talent to visually tell a story. Not a lot of people have. So if you want to try that question one more time, I think it could be interesting of what you just were talking about.
Okay, thanks. One of the main things I want people to one of the main things I want people to take away from my work is the value in relationships and how important it is to have caring, loving people in your life. Community is a life source, and and a lot of times that there is a desire for more, or a feeling of lacking, without realizing that there is a wealth already in. Well, I don't want to speak for other people. I should just speak for myself. But I found in my own life that the thing that matters to me the most is the other people, and I feel very blessed that I I feel like I've set goals and I've accomplished them, but that sounds like I'm not intrinsically motivated, but I don't know, I feel like a very calm, confident, self-assured, full person, and I feel like that is directly related to the wealth of intimate relationships I have. And so I want people to take away from my work this idea that intimacy and relationships, role models, mentors, support systems, friends, all of that is valuable and important.
Great, yeah.
Beautiful.
You just want a clear intro and then
I was gonna say, what was I gonna, there was one more thing. Oh, is my role in the nonprofit clear?
No,
Because,
I think, yeah, you did. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of have this very weird position where, for one, are you ready? For one, I'm a grant writer. The nonprofit is entirely privately funded, and so we raise money through grants. I'm involved with the development of the programming, so the various after-school curriculum and resources, mostly because not so much anymore, but when it was first being developed, I was closer in age to the young people we were helping, and so I had a kind of a very particular perspective on what a young person would need in today's world.
I think if you could do it, because we'll probably only be able to use when we introduce your student, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
talk about the nonprofit, and if you could say something like, for the nonprofit, I work as, a grant writer for the foundation as well as and whatever the title is.
Okay. So at starting right now, I'm the grant writer and program developer. I also do a lot of teaching.
And just a clear intro if you want it. Cameron Mead, and I'm currently a PFA student if you want a present tense, but we should get it.
Yeah. So just to start again, my name is.
Okay. My name is Cameron Mead, and I'm a second-year MFA student at Pratt Institute. Can I do that one more time?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got booger.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
Okay. My name is Cameron Mead, and I'm a second-year MFA student at Pratt Institute.
Perfect. And we'll just, if you don't mind saying room tone and then just quiet for 15 seconds, you just say that.
Literally?
Yes.
Room tone.